A very beautiful morning. Birds are sitting on a tree and feeding their babies. With the start of the new year, families get holidays so they can visit their parents or cousins. A woman inside an apartment is showing a video of a baby to her husband, which seems to be very adorable. The lady says to her husband, "Did you see how he said mama and crawls towards his mummy? He is a very smart kid." Both of them gets happy after watching the video and keep praising the child while on the other hand, a lady was cooking for them. The girl's name is Jia Han, and she is a 32-year-old unemployed woman living with her parents. The woman with the phone comes to Jia and shows her the video and says, "Look how cute my grandson is." Jia tells her mother in a sarcastic tone, "Mom, you have seen this video almost 100 times, and I also know what the kid is going to say or do next in this video." Jia's mother replies to her that I love my grandson so much that even if I keep looking at him the whole day, I will not get bored. While Jia and her mother are talking, her father takes advantage of this situation and eats some of the food that she was cooking. Seeing this, Jia gets angry and says that if you people cannot help me, then at least don't trouble me. Her father asks her why is she getting so angry. The food which is being prepared is for eating. Hearing this, Jia stops and says, "We are 3 people. Why should I do all the work here? Why don't you guys do something?" Jia's mother tells Jia that, "First of all, you are living in our house. We did not ask you for this, and be thankful that we are not taking rent from you. If you feel bad, then find a boy for yourself and marry him. There is no need to live with us." Jia's father also agrees with her mother and says, "Your mother is right. If you hate us so much, then find a boy for yourself." Saying this, Jia's father kisses her mother while she says, "Honey, please don't do this in front of her." Meanwhile, the doorbell rings, and as soon as Jia opens the door, a child comes running and hugs Jia's mother. The child who hugged Jia's mother is her younger sister's daughter, who had come to meet them with her husband. Parents ask them about their journey and welcome them. Jia's sister replies that her legs are hurting, so her husband, who was holding a baby, says, "Don't worry, babe, I will give you a massage." Jia interrupts them and says, "Little sister, it is nice to meet you after a long time." She gives her apron to her and says, "I prepared this flower apron just for you. Isn't it nice?" Jimin responds, "I'm also happy to see you too, my sister. But this apron looks great on you as always. Now all you have to do is get married this year." Jia smiles and tells Jimin again that, "Please, sister, wear this. I am asking you nicely. Otherwise, I will show my other side too, which won't be good for you." Suddenly, mother punched Jia hard on the face and said, "Just shut up." Jia angrily shouts at her mother and says, "Mom, why are you hitting me? I have spent my whole day cooking. Isn't it fair to change our shifts now? You are taking Yimin's side just because you met her after a very long time?" Yimin's husband Jinu jumps into their conversation and says, "Why are you bothering her? She is tired and pregnant with her 3rd child." Jia's father says this is a very happy occasion. We should celebrate and then order Jia to set the dining table. Seeing her family's behavior towards her, Jia comes out of the house and sits in the park and starts smoking in anger and thinks how rude her parents are. When she was sitting in the park and smoking, a guy eating packed chicken came to her and said, "You have not changed at all." Jia turns to the man and stares at him as she finds him very unusual because he was eating in the smoking zone. She asks him about his name because she didn't recognize him. The guy replies, "I'm Minchil Jin. I live next door, you childhood friend. I usually used to wear headphones, that's why you didn't recognize me." Jia thinks for some time. She tries to recognize him, and after a while, she finally remembers him. She tells him, "You are Jin, the gamer boy from our school." Jin asks, "Have I changed so much that it took you so long to remember me?" Jia replies, "Yes, I am having some difficulty in recognizing you because you have changed a lot. And you tell me who eats in the smoking area?" Jin answers, "There is no such rule that we cannot eat in the smoking area. And anyway, I am tired of eating home-cooked food." Jia starts thinking after hearing Jin, what kind of a boy is he? Jin was very shy in his early days, and because they lived in the same building, so they were childhood friends, but not by choice. So even calling him a friend is a scratch too. There is a boy in every class who does not make friends with anyone. Jin was that boy. He never talked to anyone, even those who lived in his building or around his house. After thinking for a while, Jia recognizes him completely. Now she again starts thinking that she is the black sheep in her whole family because she is 32 years old, unemployed, and unmarried woman. On the other hand, She was wondering how much the life of a bastard like Jin had changed. Maybe this is what city life is like, which is why a boy like Jin becomes a human being. Minchul Jin has become an assistant manager in a well-known software company at the age of 32 and looks decent. Overall, he was living a good life. On the other hand, there is Jia Han, who lives with her parents and sometimes gets scolded for even breathing at home, but she does not consider anyone as important as herself. She is a very lazy and arrogant girl who has no aim in life except getting married. Both are completely different from each other. Jia thinks that this can't be possible. How did a rude boy from her school become more successful than her? It would be better for her to bite his tongue and die. Then suddenly Jin asks Jia, "By the way, how is your life going?" Jia looks at him with nervous eyes and Jin asks her again, "Why are you scared? I just asked you how your life is going." Jia replies with a fake smile, "Nothing special. Tell me, what are you doing these days?" And then she slowly says to herself, "Can't he understand by looking at my condition how my life is going?" Jin replied casually that nothing special, I just work all day long, and if I get time then I play games on my gaming console, sleep and take bath. This is my daily routine, Jia said to him. Your life is going pretty well. Jin scratches his head and says, I think so too, but my parents think differently. For the past few years my parents have been pressuring me to get married. They says that this is the right time for me to get married. But marriage is not something I can do alone. You need another person for it too. And for this, they want me to register myself on some matrimonial service website. The registration fee for these kind of websites is $5,000. You know how many games I can buy with this amount of money. Hearing this, Jia says, your family is after you like crazy for marriage. Jin tells Jia that I think your family is not after you for marriage yet. Jia lies and says, yes, my condition is not as bad as yours. On the other hand, she keeps thinking how badly her family is after her for marriage. Jia thinks for a while and then laughingly tells Jin that since we both are screwed, we should marry each other. This could be a good option for both of us. Looking at Jin, she further says that since our lives have been ruined due to not getting married is the only option for both of us to get our lives back on track. Jin looked at Jia in surprise because, apart from the fact that they studied together in the same school, they were complete strangers to each other. Seeing Jin's expressions, Jia understands that he is confused by her words, so she tells him to listen to her first and then think about it. She further says, look, you are single, I am also single. If we both get married, then it will be a win-win situation for both of us. Hearing this, Jin becomes even more tense. Seeing this, Jia laughs falsely and says, don't be serious, I was just joking. This much is acceptable between friends. That was just a joke between friends. Jin leaves the conversation without giving Jia any reply. He then asks Jia's father for permission to marry his daughter. Her father happily gives his permission for them to marry. After getting permission from their families, they marry each other. Both of them go abroad to celebrate their honeymoon. The married couple enjoyed on the beach with friends, and then they returned back to the hotel. After taking a shower, Jin comes out of the toilet in a bathrobe, scratches his head and says that getting married is a great thing. Who knows, life can suddenly change like this. And then he asks Jia if she was not going to take a bath. Jia replies, first she will finish her drink and then she will bath. She finishes her drink, takes a bath, and comes out in her bathrobe. Both of them sit on their respective beds. They spend their whole day exploring new places, and now comes their first night of marriage. Jia is sitting on the bed with her passport in her hand, thinking that finally she is married. Then suddenly she starts having hallucinations. She feels that all this is not true because she is in another country with a stranger, so she pinches herself to see if this is true or not. When she pinched herself and felt the pain, she realized that it was true that she was now a married woman. But it all still felt very strange to her because everything happened so quickly. Jia turns and looks at Jin, who is struggling to take off his clothes, and questions herself if she married this guy. Then suddenly Jia's eyes fall on Jin's ripped body, and she gets very impressed by it. She slaps herself to snap out of it, since she was getting distracted by looking at his body. Jia sits with her back towards Jin, so that he cannot see her expressions. But still Jin feels something is not right with her. So he asks her, are you okay? Jia answers, yes, I am fine. Just feeling a little sleepy. Jin replies, if you are feeling sleepy, then go to sleep. Gia then turns to Jin, who is looking for something in his bag, so she asks him, "What are you trying to do?" Jin replies, "I'm looking for something that will make our first night better, but I can't find it." Strange, isn't it? Gia blushes and asks, "What have you packed? Is there anything special?" Then suddenly she remembers that he is talking about making the first night special. She says to herself, "What is that bastard looking for?" Gia starts having wrong thoughts about whether he will do something wrong to her and gets scared. She suddenly shouts, "Don't come close to me. I am not ready yet. I need some time." Jin looks at Gia in surprise and says, "Ready for what? I have just want to offer you earplugs." He further says, "I don't usually snore, but sometimes when I get very tired, I start snoring." And then he gives the earplugs he was holding in his hand to Gia. She looks at plugs in surprise because she was thinking about something else. While Jin lies down on his bed and says, "I'm sleepy," and bids her good night and goes to sleep under the blanket. Within a few seconds, Jin starts snoring loudly and falls asleep. Gia looks at him. What was I thinking about him? Later, she also goes to sleep after putting in the earplugs. On the second day of their honeymoon, Gia was sitting on her bed with clothes scattered around her, confused about what she should wear to look good. She was looking for something that was fashionable and attractive enough, and at the same time it should be comfortable and mundane also. Suddenly, Jin comes out of the washroom saying, "I am ready. How much time do you need, Gia, to get ready?" Gia turns to Jin and yells angrily at him because Jin is dressed so poorly. She asks him what kind of man is he? Is he from the same planet or some kind of alien? And the worst thing about Jin is that he doesn't know what the problem is. She can't believe her eyes that he is wearing socks with sandals. Jin replied, "What difference does it make? You don't know how comfortable these clothes are, and another thing, no one is going to notice them." Gia says, "I have already noticed them. Everyone will definitely notice them, and I can't see you like this." Gia holds his ear and takes him for shopping. After reaching the mall, Jin selects some clothes for himself while Gia stands outside the changing room while Jin tries on clothes. Gia thinks she has brought him for shopping, but she also has no knowledge of fashion either. Gia hasn't stepped out of the house for many years, but she is confident that whatever clothes Jin wears now will look better on him than what he wore before. Then after a while, Jin comes out of the changing room and asks her how he is looking. This time, Jin comes wearing even worse clothes than before. Seeing them, Gia gets very angry. She curses herself and says how stupid she is to have brought a man for shopping who has no manners of dressing up. Gia angrily says, "If you are a human, then at least learn to dress like humans." And then she quickly brings some clothes she likes and gives them to Jin. After some time, he comes out wearing them. Jin looks at himself after wearing Gia's choice of clothes and asks her if he looks good or not. Gia confidently replied that, "Yes, you look great. You should wear such clothes. And if you listen to me, you will always look good." Hearing this, Jin goes to the billing counter and asks for 7 sets of the same clothes he is wearing. Seeing Jin's these stupid actions, Gia scratches her hair and says, "Stop it, you crazy man." Jin asked her, "But you said I look good in these clothes, so I am buying them." Gia sighed and said, "What kind of life are you living? I like them, but you don't need to buy the same sets of clothes." Gia asks Jin to wait there while she goes to get more clothes for him. When Gia is looking for clothes for him, then Jin's eyes fall on Lady's swimming suit. So he asks Gia, "We have that boat ride next, right? Since you have chosen clothes for me, I will choose a swimsuit for you." She nodded, blushed, and gave her consent. And then Jin also bought swimsuit for Gia in return. Both of them leave for the beach after shopping. While going on the way, Gia keeps thinking that just like Jin wore the clothes selected by her, she will have to wear the suit selected by him. She looks at Jin as they walk and wishes that he had picked out a nice swimsuit for her too. After reaching at the beach, the two go to their respective changing room and wear swimsuits chosen by Jin. Gia was still skeptical about the clothes as she knew her husband's choice, which is always unusual, but she took the risk and tried them. As soon as Gia opens her bag, she is stunned to see the clothes. She spends some time thinking about the kind of person her husband is, but then finally comes out wearing those clothes because she has no other choice. As soon as Jin saw Gia wearing a full-body swimsuit, he asked, "Do you like it? These are nice, right?" Gia was very angry with Jin because he chose those instead of choosing a 2-piece swimsuit, and now everyone was making their fun. Seeing Gia getting angry, Jin explains his viewpoint that he was looking through the catalog earlier, And this suddenly came across to him that it will keep us safe even in cold water and reduce water friction, so it will be really comfortable to walk around in. Jin feels very proud of his choice, as if he has accomplished something great. Hearing this, Jia thinks she has married a madman. Jia lovingly tells him that Jin, we are married and on our honeymoon. Just look around and see what kind of clothes people are wearing. At least you could copy them. Pointing at the people roaming around there, she says, how different we are looking from these people. Why do you think everyone is wearing things like that? Jin replies quickly and says, perhaps those people might be feeling hot. Jia responds to him, you are absolutely right, Jin. People here have taken off their clothes because it is so hot. I think we are the only people who are not doing that. Jia screams in anger as she cannot express how embarrassed she feels, and how will she enjoy the beach now when everyone is staring at her. But still, Jin somehow convinces her and takes her for a boat ride. While the two of them are enjoying the boat ride, Jia realizes that Jin's choice may not look good, but it is comfortable to wear, protecting them from the cold water and any skin rashes. After the boat ride, both of them have lunch on the beach and take a lot of photos for memories. They spend their whole day in these activities, and then in the evening, both of them go for a walk on the beach. After walking for a while, Jia sits down on the sand and checks her phone to see what else they can do to make their trip more memorable. Seeing Jia sitting there, Jin thought she might be tired, so he asked if she wanted to go back to the hotel to rest. Jia yells at him and asks, do you know how expensive this trip is? If we want to get the most out of every penny, we have to do a lot. While she was telling him all this, Jin noticed that Jia's sandal straps had caused a wound on her foot, so he asks about it. Jia says, please do not bother, it's nothing. It is just a mark caused by my heels. Jin insists her that this wound might hurt her, and then he sits down and asks Jia to climb on his back. She gets surprised by his concern for her. Jin asks her again, it hurts by just looking at it, so don't think too much. Just climb up. With a little hesitation, Jia climbs on his back. Jin grabbed Jia's sandals and lifted her on his back and walked towards the hotel. Jia, sitting on his back, politely asks, am I not heavy? Jin replies, honestly, you are really not heavy. It would be a good workout for me. Hearing Jin's words, Jia thought he was making fun of her, so she tried to strangle him in a playful way. Jin urged her to loosen her grip and said, I'm serious. You have just the right amount of weight for a good workout. I'd say you're almost perfect. Then Jia slowly loosens her grip and rests her chin on his shoulder and starts thinking, how long has it been since she have been on someone's back? Being on someone else's back is more comforting than she thought. Suddenly, Jia takes her mouth near his ear and blows air into it, due to which Jin stumbles, and he asks her, what are you doing? If you have any complaint, then tell me. Don't bother me like this. Jia smiles slightly but doesn't reply to him, and thus both of them reach their hotel fighting and flirting. After reaching the hotel at night, Jia lies down on her bed and starts checking her phone to see the photos she has taken. Then Jia suddenly remembers that a friend of hers who got married 5 years ago had told her that couples fight a lot during their honeymoon. Then Jia thinks it's only been a few days since they got married. Forget the fights. They are having a lot of fun together. She knows she is having a great time, and it has been a while since she had this kind of fun. She was so happy that she wanted to stay there forever. Then suddenly the moment comes to Jia's mind when Jin asked her to climb on his back. This moment was very special for her because something like this had never happened to her before. She feels shy thinking about this moment and hides her face in the pillow. Jia says to herself, how casually he asked me to sit on his back. At that moment, I thought my heart would explode, and I don't understand why his back was so broad. He was quite warm also. And then slowly, Jia pulls her face out of the pillow and looks at Jin, who is sleeping on the bed next to her. Jia is surprised to see how Jin is sleeping, as he is sleeping with his eyes blindfolded and drooling continuously from his mouth. Whatever respect or like Jia has developed for Jin, it all diminishes and reaches a very low level when she sees him sleeping. Then she lies down, consoling herself and thinking that her honeymoon was quite good, and quietly falls asleep. After their sweet, bitter honeymoon, Jia and Jin return back to their homes. At Jia's home, her mother had cooked a lot of dishes, and there were boxes lying around in the apartment. Jia found it unusual, so she asked about the food in boxes. Jia's mother reminds Jia that before she married Jin, she promised them that she would move into his apartment, and regarding the food, she said that she is happy with her daughter's marriage, and hence she has cooked these dishes for her as a gift. Jia slowly remembers that before going to honeymoon, they had said something like this to convince her family for the marriage. When she was compiling all this, her parents came to her and said, "My little daughter, go and live a happy life. You can do this." And then they slowly push her out of the house. Now Jia understands why her mother was cooking all these dishes. She packs all her stuff, takes the courier van, and leaves. Jia was very sad to leave her parents. After arriving at Jin's house, she suddenly remembered an old cartoon theme song, which says, "It's okay to make mistakes because you're not an adult yet." She didn't know what it meant at the time, but she understands now. It meant you're completely screwed if you make mistakes as an adult, because her one mistake of asking Jin for marriage completely changed her life. Her parents kicked her out of the house. She only knows a few things about Jin, and now she has to live with him. Jin also has his own conditions for letting Jia stay with him, so he proposes to make a contract between them. There were already many things going on in Jia's life, and now this contract issue made her even more irritable, but she has no other option, so she agreed to this contract. Jia took the contract paper in her hand, and after thinking for a while, she also started mentioning the things she wanted to include in the contract, just like Jin was doing. After some thinking and writing, they both complete their contract. Jin asks Jia if she has completed her contract forms, to which she replies yes. Then Jin says that on the count of 3, the two will show each other their forms. Jin's contract states that Jia must quit smoking, not to worry about the rats in the apartment, and that if she has any questions, she can ask him without hesitation. Jia, on the other hand, mentioned that he has to knock before entering her room, he cannot force her for anything, and thirdly, if he has any issue with her, then he can solve it through communication. After seeing the conditions written by Jin, Jia gets agitated at the point where he mentioned that she should quit smoking, so she asked him how dare he is to ask her to quit smoking when even her father cannot ask her to do so. Jin says he's not asking her to quit smoking immediately, but at least she can cut it down to a moderate level since he doesn't like the smell of smoke. Jia replied that it is very difficult to reduce smoking to moderate levels. If it was that easy, she would have done it already. And then she asked the second point about the mouse. And suddenly she feels that something has touched her feet, so she asked Jin about it. When she looked down, she saw a cat sniffing around her feet. Jin sat down to pet the cat and asked Jia, "Did you see how smart my mouse is? She knows we are talking about her, so she came out." Jia immediately asked Jin what the cat's name was, as he has named it Mouse, because it's very strange that a cat is named Mouse. But Jin didn't find it strange, because his cat liked mice, so he named it Mouse. Jia thought, as per this principle, if he was allowed, he can also name her as a chicken hen, because she liked chicken very much. Jin keeps playing with his cat and asks the cat to say hello to Jia. Then she politely asks, "You never mentioned that you have a cat, Jin." Jin replied, "Because I never thought I would ever have to live with someone." And then he asked Jia if she likes cats or not. Before Jia could reply, Jin saw her expressions and made a sad face of himself and the cat with tears in his eyes so that Jia would not be able to say no to the cat. Under a lot of emotional pressure, Jia says, if she really has to choose, she would love to have a cat. When she said she would love to have a cat, Jin offered her to hold the mouse in her hand if she wanted. Saying that my cat is very nice, Jin handed the cat to Jia's hand. She starts caressing the mouse. While petting Jin's cat, she asks him if she doesn't like cats or if she's allergic to them. Will he then let her stay in his apartment? He replies that at that time, he would have rented a room for her. Jia asked excitedly, "What about the rent then?" Jin casually replies that money isn't a problem for him. He'll manage it. They're married now, so it's all his responsibility. Hearing this, Jia felt that this boy is very serious about marriage. She had not thought so much till now. After the dinner, the two of them write a mutual marriage contract based on their respect for each other. Some of the things about the contract are, do not come inside for at least 10 minutes after smoking. Do not disturb the mouse. Do not enter the other person's room without permission. Always resolve issues through communication. After reading the entire contract, both of them asked each other whether they agree with it or not. Before anyone replies, suddenly Jin says there is one more important thing which they have forgot to mention in the contract form. Gia asks about it. Jin told her that this contract marriage can be terminated at any time by either party, and it is the main point of all the above. Gia agrees with Jin, and then they added this point to the form as well. Both of them then signed the contract in the orthodox manner using their thumb impressions. After signing, Jin says, "Well then, Gia Han, I look forward to living with you." After that, both shook hands. Gia, after signing the contract, which was a necessary thing for Jin, to allow someone else to live in his apartment. Gia, exhausted from the honeymoon and now from the journey from her home to Jin's apartment, lay down on the floor of the room she had been allotted. Before going to sleep, she buys furniture and other essentials for her new home, ordering online. After knowing that she had nothing else to do as she would unpack her belongings once the furniture arrived, she lays down on the mattress her mother had given her. While lying down, she stares at the walls and ceiling of the apartment and suddenly becomes sad, thinking that from now this is her home. She feels very lonely and gently hugs the blanket. Gia tells herself that she is married and this is her house now, and Jin Minchul, who lives in the next room, is her husband. On the other hand, Jin was comfortably playing games on his gaming console without any stress. While thinking all these things, Gia slowly falls asleep. Due to the fatigue and stress of the whole day, Gia sleeps, snoring loudly like an animal. The next morning, before Gia wakes up, Jin begins preparing breakfast. The sound of chopping vegetables and the whistle of the cooker from the kitchen wakes up Gia from sleep. Scratching her head, walking sleepingly, Gia asks what with the noise so early. Jin replied, "Sorry, I was making breakfast. Did I wake you up?" Gia's eyes light up on hearing about the breakfast and she becomes happy. She asks Jin to cook quickly because she was hungry and excited to see what he is cooking. Gia is impressed to see Jin working and wonders what kind of a man he is who cooks himself before going to work, and she keeps staring at him and blushing. Jin took all the chopped vegetables and put them in the grinder and ground them into a smoothie. While Gia was still blushing thinking about Jin, then he pours this prepared smoothie into a big mug and places it in front of Gia and says, "Gia, this is the chicken breast veggie smoothie for you." Gia sees the smoothie and asks, "What the hell is this?" Jin replies, "This is breakfast." Gia somehow drinks the smoothie with fear and reluctance without saying a word. As she drunk it, Jin asks her about smoothie, but she still doesn't answer. But Jin gives her a protein bar. She can't control her anger and throws it away and says, "What the hell is this? Did you call this breakfast?" Jin politely replied that protein bars and veggie smoothies are the good options for breakfast, and they are also good for the body. Hearing this, Gia shouts aggressively and says, "I know you have cooked and packed all the delicious food for your lunch, which you are going to take to your work." Jin doesn't say anything after this. He quietly opens his lunchbox and shows it to Gia. It contains 200 grams of chicken breast and 200 grams of sweet potato. Just suddenly remembers that when they first met, he was eating chicken breast, and even on holidays, he would only eat chicken breast. But then she again thought that on the contrary, Jin is a human being also, so he must be eating something other than chicken. So to confirm her doubt, she opens the refrigerator to check. She found that there were water bottles on top, then sweet potatoes, some vegetables, and lots of chicken breasts packed packets. Seeing all this, Gia starts feeling dizzy, and she slowly lies down on the floor. She apologizes to her mother and thanks her for all the food she has cooked for her so far, and says that if she ever gets a chance to eat food cooked by her in the future, she will never complain. She starts scratching the floor with her fingers and says she will be better daughter from now on. Seeing Gia like this, Jin asks, "Is there really nothing you can eat?" Gia replies politely and sarcastically, "Why wouldn't there be anything? The refrigerator is full of healthy food. I already feel healthier by just looking at it." Jin noticed that Gia was not happy with the breakfast thing. Even though she was hungry, she had not eaten a bite, so he asked her to bring breakfast from outside. Hearing this, Gia gets up and asks, can she go out for breakfast alone? Can she really do that? Jin replied, "What do you mean, of course you can go out and eat? For me, this is all I need to eat, but there is no compulsion for you to eat it. Feel free to eat whatever you want." Gia gets up wondering what she was thinking. Just like her mother who used to force her to have breakfast at home with the family, it has become a sort of habit for her. After eating his breakfast, Jin put on his bag and starts to get ready for the work. Seeing Jin getting ready, Gia asks him what he is getting ready for. Jin replied, He has to go out for work. Gia yawns and says bye, have a nice day. Jin gives her a look. Gia asks him if he doesn't feel jealous of her that she gets to spend her whole day at home while he has to work outside. Jin denied that there is nothing like that. Gia shouted then, "Why are you giving me that look? Soon I will also find a job for myself. Do you still think I will remain unemployed forever, like I was on the first day when we met?" Jin again denied that he did not intend to hurt her feelings in any way. After hearing it, Gia's mood swings. Suddenly she says, "Okay, then have a nice day. Come back soon. See you for the dinner." Jin gets confused by her behavior. He asks if she's sure, if he can leave now. She nodded yes and then smiled sarcastically. As Jin left the apartment, Gia screamed out loud with joy, laughed and said she'll enjoy being unemployed as long as she can. She was happy because she had made up her mind that she would continue enjoying it until her bank account was empty. The scene now shifts to outside of the apartment, where a guy sitting inside his car and adjusting his rearview mirror. Suddenly, someone knocked on his window. He turns and saw Jin standing outside. He greeted him by saying, "It's been a while since I saw you last." The guy's name is Sam, and he is Minchiel's subordinate at work. Jin got into Sam's car, and the two headed to their offices. Sam told Jin that he was really surprised. Before he could finish his sentence, Jin interrupted him and asked what he was surprised about. Sam finishes by saying that he is going to use 10 days of vacation after the holidays. He has already told his boss, so Jin can submit the vacation request form that he has just emailed to him. Sam thanks him because Jin sent some gifts during his holidays and says he is hard to read. Hearing all this, Jin takes a sigh of relief and smiles a little. When Sam saw him smiling, he asked if something happened as no one had seen him smiling like that. Jin did not reply and kept thinking about Gia, who was waiting for him at home. After being lost in thoughts about Gia for a long time, Jin suddenly says to himself, "It is good that someone is waiting for you at home." Sam replied, "Yes, it is a good feeling," and asked him if someone is waiting for him. Jin replied without thinking, "Yes, my wife is waiting for me." Sam was shocked to hear this, and he suddenly applied the brakes. Car skids. Jin somehow maintains his balance. Sam asked in surprise, "Is he talking about some game?" Then Jin cleared Sam's doubt that he was talking about a real wedding and real wife. Showing his phone, he said, "He got married last week." Suddenly, a girl sitting in the back seat enters the scene and asks who did what to whom. As they reach the office, Sam tells everyone about Jin's marriage, and everyone congratulates him in their own way. Jin thanks them and tries to avoid the situation by saying he bought souvenirs for everyone. Some of his co-workers praise Jin, saying that marriage has already made him a new man. One of Jin's colleagues says that he should have invited them to the wedding. Jin tried to control the situation by saying that it all happened at the last minute. It was a small, simple wedding attended only by family members. They keep asking Jin questions about his vacation and honeymoon. Sam, who is part of the conversation, suddenly remembers that he has a coding assignment from yesterday, so he leaves the conversation midway. He tells himself that the deadline for this task is not today, but he is determined to finish it all by this evening. Suddenly, someone put a hand on Jin's shoulder and said, "Sam, can we talk for a moment?" He completely freaks out. This was the same girl who came with Jin and Sam in their car, Maria. She is Jin's senior manager in the office. She pulls Sam into the storeroom. Maria strangles Sam, crying and screaming. She asked, "You said you were sure Jin was single. He wasn't dating anyone, so how did he suddenly get married?" Meanwhile, Sam requests her to let go of his neck and let him go. Considering his request, Maria let go of his neck and grabbed his collar and shook him and asked him to tell her how all this happened. Sam loses his senses after this abuse. On the other hand, sad Maria, who was 33 years old, completely lost her control after knowing this because she loved Jin very much. Maria is a genius girl currently working as a senior manager in a tech company, the most beautiful girl in the eyes of her parents. When she won the math Olympiad as a kid, she wanted a guy who was tall, smart, caring, mature, and polite. When she got admission into science high school at the age of 16, her demands decreased. Now she wants a boy who is taller and smarter than her. By the age of 22, Maria had completed her graduation in computer science, but she still hadn't found a guy. She wanted nothing more than a guy she could depend on. Now at the age of 33, she has become the youngest woman to become a senior manager in an organization. Now she just wants a guy for herself, nothing more. A few days ago, she faced the most embarrassing moment of her life when she went on a blind date with a 40-year-old divorced man with 2 kids. Maria faced further embarrassment when this news spread among her coworkers. This incident completely broke her, and she was at the lowest point in her life. She devotes herself completely to work because there is nothing else to do in her life. Once when she is working late at night, she starts yawning due to sleepiness. She tries to sleep, but the thoughts of finding a perfect boy for herself keep coming to her mind. She asks herself what specifically she is asking for. At that moment, Jin suddenly came to her, gave her an energy drink, and asked her to check over his task. She looks towards Jin, and at that particular moment, she made up her mind that Jin Minchul is the perfect guy for her. Maria then shares her feelings with Sam. Sam is a person who likes to set people up with each other. He works part-time as a matchmaker, and in return, he usually gets a delicious meal from his client. Sam was quite confident about Jin and Maria's case, as he was Jin's friend since college days. He felt he knew him very well. So Sam proudly tells Maria that it is a piece of cake for him. She can start looking for wedding venues. He promises Maria that she will marry Jin, and he will help her in this. He completely assures Maria that she will only marry Jin. Now when she suddenly finds out that Jin got married, all her dreams and hopes are shattered. She cannot control her anger, and she attacks Sam. After a while, when Maria's anger subsides, she leaves him. Sam puts an ice pack on his neck and asks himself, how is this possible? How can a guy like Jin get married? He was a man who had no interest in girls. Then Sam shows his biceps to Maria and says that all this is because of following Jin's instructions. Not only does he not look at women, he doesn't look at anyone at all. Maria asks with a sad heart, then how did this happen? Sam consoles Maria and says, don't be sad. It is not that he is the only guy in the world. There are plenty of guys. Upon hearing this, Maria starts crying loudly. In all this commotion, the day ends and Jin leaves for home. While Jin is busy with his phone, Maria and Sam follow him. While they were following him, Sam asked Maria if it was necessary to follow. Maria replied that she wanted to be extra sure with stuff like this. Sam then asks her if she wants to make a bet on Jin's wedding versus the world ending tomorrow. Maria expressed grief and said that the end of the world is more possible than Jin's marriage. Both agree to this, but to confirm their suspicions, they follow him. After walking some distance, Jin reached his apartment, where Gia was sitting outside and smoking a cigarette. Jin says hello to Gia. Maria and Sam, who were following Jin, notice this. Maria is deeply saddened to see Gia and compares herself to her, wondering what kind of girl Jin married. Jin said hi to Gia, who was in a bad mood, so she didn't reply. Jin got a little scared seeing her reaction. Jin furiously asked what happened. Gia murmurs angrily and asks if he really wants to know what happened. Sam and Maria, who were following them, noticed this. Maria asked Sam, what kind of girl does Jin love? Sam requested her to keep quiet so that they could hear them. Maria accepts his words. They start listening to them again. Gia asked Jin, why are you coming home now? Jin replied that he came straight home after work, is it late, and then asked about the time. Seeing them arguing, Maria asked Sam what is going on. Are they fighting? Before Sam could say anything, Gia tells Jin that technically he isn't late, but he should have at least let her know that he was going to be late so she wouldn't have to wait for him for dinner. Hearing this, Jin asked Gia if she was waiting to have dinner with him. While Jin thought she was still angry at him for the breakfast incident, so she might not want to have dinner with him. Gia pokes Jin and says, isn't it common sense to call her if he has more work or if he's going to be late? Maria and Sam get happy seeing them fighting, but a question arises in their mind whether they are really husband and wife. Then Jin asks Gia if he's allowed to call her. After listening, this Gia looks at him weirdly. Jin further added that he thinks she doesn't like it when he calls her, so he's trying to call her as little as possible. Gia asks him when and what did she do that made him think like this. Jin replies, in 5th grade elementary school, when they didn't even have cell phones, he used to call her on the house phone. Jin further added that at that time, he wanted to play video games with her, so he would always call her home. Gia tries to remember those moments, but she can't remember a thing, and then her mood suddenly changes, and she gets angry at Jin for being late. As she continued to scold Jin, she noticed someone was watching them. She tells this to Jin. Seeing this, Sam and Maria try to hide themselves. Jin turns back to see who is following them, but doesn't find anyone. Then Gia says that maybe she saw something else. Jin then takes out his phone and saves Gia's contact number in his phone and confirms with her again that he can call her now. Gia laughs and confidently says, "Of course you can call," while on the other hand she feels she is getting into some kind of a trap. Sam thanks God that he was not caught by Jin and racks his brain and tries to remember as Jin's wife looks familiar to him. Meanwhile, Jin asks Gia what she wants for dinner. She replies that she can eat whatever he wants her. Time passes, and now the story moves forward. After dinner, Gia was brushing her teeth and thinking that even the monkey at the zoo must be eating better than this, as the dinner menu was chicken breast. Same as breakfast and lunch. Then she tries to recall Jin's fifth-grade thing that he has told her earlier, but she doesn't remember anything. She says to herself that how can anybody remember something that happened 20 years ago? At midnight, Gia, sitting on her bed, running fingers through her hair and kept trying to remember about the past. Slowly, she remembers that Jin was the boy she used to hang out with all the time in preschool. They were of the same age and same class and were very close to each other at that time. Their parents go to office together. They were from the same neighborhood. That is why at that time they were teased for being together. Gia's female friends teased her as Mitchell's girlfriend. Teasing from friends was the main reason for their separation. After these teasing incidents, whenever Jin called Gia to hang out together, she always refused. This teasing issue becomes so big for Gia that they even after getting admitted in the same middle school, where Jin tries to make things right between them, and he tried to be friends again, but she always ignored him. Gia feels very embarrassed remembering all this. She starts cursing herself for behaving badly with Jin. Then Gia suddenly checks her phone to see if Jin has called her after their wedding. She found out that he didn't call her even once. He only messaged her twice, which was only about their marriage and vacation. Gia feels bad for being rude to Jin and says to herself that if she had known from school days that he was so serious about her, she would never have done that to him. She felt very cruel and thought of asking him for forgiveness. While on the other room, Jin was checking his phone. He searched something and then sent it to Gia. As soon as the message came through, she checked her phone and smiled when she saw that Jin had sent her a screenshot of the food he ordered online. Gia wonders how Jin knew that chicken feet soup was one of her favorite dishes. Suddenly, she enters Jin's room to find out how he knows so much about her. Seeing Gia, Jin says, "Hey, I thought you were the one who said we shouldn't barge into each other's rooms without permission." Gia replies coldly, "Oh, I forgot to knock. Excuse me, are you happy now?" After this, Gia showed him the contract form and said that we have clause 5 of our contract in which it is written that if there is any issue, then we will discuss and resolve it. She further said that she has an issue which she wants to resolve. Thanks for watching and comment the best part of this video.